Wonderful. All right, now we are learning from the speeches of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1992. A few months before he had a terrible stroke, which rendered him mute, couldn't speak. And the Rebbe is preparing us for the difficulties that have visited our generation. And especially the biggest difficulty is thinking about, doing something about Moshiach. And the Rebbe, even to the degree that he said, that's all we should be thinking about. All of your life, all of your time should be devoted only to Moshiach. Only to thinking about Moshiach. Of course, we have to learn what Moshiach is, but I mean, pretty much we know. You learn in the end of the Rambam, he explains Maimonides, what we're looking for. But the Rebbe is explaining also this revealed godliness that's going to be. And that's what we have to be thinking about. When God is revealed, so everything will be the way it's supposed to be. Well, the world will be healthy. So then we said that was what really began Jacob. Yaakov, he really brought it into the world. And something like this we find in all the Rebbes of Chabad. There's other great tzaddikim also, but the Rebbes of Chabad, they were very, very concerned and occupied every moment of their lives with every fiber of their being to bringing Mashiach in every way possible. And one big example into the physical world, and one big example we can see of this is the second Rebbe of Chabad, that he passed away on the same day that he was born. In other words, his life, so to speak, was a completeness physically in this physical world. Okay, so here we have a thing about Yaakov, and it says like this. We're going to see how he does this. Watch this, to bring godliness into the world. Ready? Now, because this is in the Torah, so this is empowering all of us, me and you. So it says by Yaakov, that he left Beersheba and Vayivka b'makom. And it says that he met this, he came in contact with this place. And what was the place? So it says this was the place where the Holy Temple was. We'll see. Okay, there's different opinions. In any case, we'll see. Vayolan Sham, in any case, he waited there. He went to sleep there. He bought Shemesh because the sun set. Vayikach mi'avnei hamakom, and he took from the stones of this place. Vayasem mirashotov, and he put them under his head. A pillow. Who makes a pillow from rocks? But that's what he did. And Rashi explains that he didn't really put them under his head. He put them around his head. And we'll put rocks around his head. And the reason he put the rocks around his head was to protect him from the wild animals. And he laid down in that place. And then we saw this ladder. Remember the Jacob's ladder, and there's angels that are going up and they're coming down. Okay, what's this talking about? Why did he put the rocks around his head? We'll talk about that in a moment. What's this got to do with us? First of all, who saw this? It was Yaakov was totally alone. Only God saw it. Right? That's written in the Torah. This is God writing. That Jacob, it was one person in the middle of nowhere, and no one could see him. And this is so monumental that it's written in the Torah. And what he did also doesn't seem to have any real importance. He took a bunch of stones, he put them around his head, he laid down on that place. Okay, kasher nishmasa shel Yehudi, when the soul of a Jew comes into the physical world, litlabesh baguf, to come into a body, a physical body in this world, the word for world in Hebrew is not a very flattering word. The word for world is olam, and olam has all the letters, in fact, in that order of halem, concealment. The world is hiding something. This physical world is hiding something. Chassidut explains that not only is it hiding something, it's hiding everything. We have no idea, because of the world, we have no idea what reality is, and we have no idea who we are. Miyad, immediately, when a soul comes into the world and it's concealed, and godliness is concealed, and the soul becomes all confused and thinks that the reality is me. Immediately, there is Bo Hashemish, the sun sets. Helen shall al giloi, a concealment over the light of the sun. And God is sometimes called sun, S-U-N. Shemesh u'magen Hashem Elokim. Like it says, God is a sun and the shield over the sun. Katotzem is there. When the soul comes into the body, as the, so to speak, the sun sets. As a result from that, Vayishka b'makamahu, he lays down. Vayin yeshchiva, what does it mean that laying down? That the head of the person, the highest qualities, mishtaveh, becomes equal with the feet. Amata, the lowest part. And we're going to explain this. This is also good, but al yedei helam behester, by means of the concealment, olamazeh gashmi b'chomri, this feels a tachton shein tachton mimata mimenu. There's nothing lower than it. You walk down the street, you see some drunkard laying down on the ground, where he's all drunk. You see his head is on the same level of his feet. Right? You can't get any lower than that. People that are sick, they're in the hospital, you got to lay down. What do you mean lay down? That your body becomes so dominant that you can't think, you can't do anything. You just, the body is the same level as the head. So to speak, you're not even a real human being. It's like an animal, right? An animal's body is on the same level as his head. Be'inyan hester oro, a concealed godliness, v'choshech kavlum of chupol, doubled and redoubled darkness in the world. Ubefrat b'choshech loyal, and especially now we're in the exile, the darkness of exile. Kasher oteotenu lo re'inu, we don't see any miracles at all. We don't even see any sign that maybe there is such a thing as God. And especially now we're in the heels of the Moshiach. We're found not just in the darkness of the world, we're found in the darkest of the darkest of the darkness. We're asleep, we're laying down. That our powers of perception of God are totally concealed. If so, the head and the feet are equal. We can't even imagine. We just said in the last class that the Rebbe brings in chapter 24 of the Tanya that Daniel in the lion's den, in a way, it wasn't a miracle. That Daniel was so connected to God, he was so conscious that he was being created and that the whole world is just this amazing creation, that the lions even were affected by it. And they didn't hurt him. Okay, when we hear this story, what do we think? What does that mean? How could it be? You're in front of a lion. You ever see a lion? It's the most scary thing. A big dog. A big dog comes out. I remember I went to someone's house once and he had this huge Rottweiler dog that was tied in his dog house right outside the door. I didn't know there was a dog in the dog house. I walked by and this thing jumped out at me. I never was so frightened in my life. He didn't have a chance for anything, just frozen with fear, right? So, and that's a dog. Well, a dog is very powerful. It's nothing like a lion. A lion weighs 3 times as much as a dog, And there's some dogs that are nice, you have tame dogs, you see dogs all over the place. Lions, very rare that you see a lion, someone walking on the street with a lion. And Daniel was in a den with 50 lions. Who knows how many was that? It says the number, I forgot how many lions there were. And he wasn't, not only was he not afraid, the lions were afraid of him. The lions were all calm. Like I said, like it was in Noah's Ark. So we think to ourselves, how could a person be attached to God? What does it mean to be attached to God? What does that mean? What do you mean attached to? Did God really exist? I mean, there's really such a thing, right? That because we're in exile, so we don't feel it. But to Daniel, it was an obvious thing and eventually it'll be obvious to all the world. But now we are in exile, and all that's obvious to us is that there's a world and that there's no creator to the world. The world just was created by, who knows, cosmic forces or whatever it was, and just nature. That keeps everything going. There's no such thing as God. Doesn't make any sense, right? That's what the world screams out, and it's got a lot of proofs. There's a lot of scientists and a lot of people that are really 100% sure of this, because our normal senses don't perceive it. Why not? The soul perceived it before it was born, because when it gets born, it comes into the world, and the world becomes all there is dominant. And that's the way God wants it to be. Olam Hazeh, this physical world, is filled with what's called klippas and sitra achra. It's filled with all sorts of shells and opposing forces to God, that they oppose God really. That's what's called moridim. They rebel against God. And therefore, there has to be therefore he has to take from the stones of the place, because he was afraid of the wild animals. What's this talking about? So, okay, so there's danger. What are these stones? We'll find out. Why does God do such a bizarre thing as this? I thought God was supposed to be good. What does he throw us into this terrible prison for? Why? Throwing us into the lion's den. Why would he do that? Says the Rebbe, because specifically by means of the descent, Nifal is brought about Giloi Visgarbrus Aruchnis. There's brought about a domination of the spiritual, the soul, and also even more the physicality of the body. That also the descent of the body, that he lays down and sleeps over there, and he lays down, that his head is equal with his body. Because of this, it draws down holiness of the soul even into his body. Usually when a person learns Torah, he does the commandments, so it's all in his head. He understands ideas, he prays, he's thinking about God, how great God is. Right? If a person loses his consciousness and he doesn't think about God, and he doesn't, well, let's say a person in his head has the same consciousness, as the same awareness of Torah and commandments as he does his toe. Your toe doesn't know anything. So usually the way it is the head has a chance to be godly, and it leads the rest of the body. Says the Rebbe, but by means of Yaakov putting his head and his foot on the same level, as he gave a chance for his foot to receive godliness, just like his head, and even more, that he lie down is a good thing, that the body, the physical body, united with the soul. By means of this, it caused completion, even a higher level with the ain. So we can say one level that his head went down to his body, or we can say the other way, that his body was elevated to the level of the head. They were on the same level. Is this possible? This is relevant to each and every one of us. Let's see how. Yuvan, so we can understand by preceding the question, like we asked them aforeshem, what it says in the pasuk, it says that he met that place and he laid down in that place. How is it possible that he could lay down in that place? What is the place? The place is the Beit HaMikdash, the holy temple. Yaakov went to sleep in the holy temple. We should have gotten to that place. It should be dancing with joy, happiness, revelation of God, right? It makes everybody energetic, vibrant, dynamic. What did Yaakov do? Went to sleep. And the Torah tells us he went to sleep. Even though that the sun set, suddenly, not in the right time of the day, in order that he would go to sleep there. Hari Omer Chazal, the rabbis say, it says, Kan Shechav, it says that Yaakov slept, laid down over there, but the 14 years that he was in the house of Shem Ve'ever, he didn't sleep. What happened? Yaakov left Beersheba, and he didn't go immediately. He went to learn Torah. 14 years. It says the whole 14 years he was there, he did not go to sleep. He sat and he learned Torah. Exactly what he learned, I don't know to this very day, but they say that's the 7 mitzvahs, Noahide commandments with all their details. Maybe he learned Kabbalah, secrets, and it was whatever it was so demanding and so interesting that he didn't go to sleep for 14 years. That's what it says, 14 years. He didn't go to sleep for 14 years because he was learning Torah, Osek B'Torah. But over here, it was the first time in 14 years he went to sleep. Kan Shechav, Avakol Chav, and also there's another place where it says, all of the 20 years that he was in the house of Lavan, this is afterwards, he also didn't go to sleep. So it ended up that in the course of 34 years, Yaakov got one night of sleep. 14 years before he went to sleep here, the 14 years as he didn't go to sleep because he was learning Torah. After he went to the house of Lavan, right? Lavan, he worked there for 20 years straight. 20 years straight. 7 years for Rachel, 7 years for Leah, and another 6 years for the sheep. 20 years he didn't sleep. But all of a sudden, this place of the Holy Temple, this is where he went to sleep. This doesn't make any sense. If he didn't go to sleep when he was learning Torah, for sure he shouldn't go to sleep when he was in the place of the Holy Temple. So if so, from this we understand that this that he laid down was not a bad thing. This was a good thing. Exactly the opposite. It was the best. Inyan Zem Mizgala, this is revealed only in the place of the Holy Temple. And we can say the explanation is this. The difference between standing up and laying down and sitting down and laying down is based on when a person is standing up, and also when a person is sitting down, you can see clearly the difference between ha'chelik elyon at the top of the person and the chest of a person and the feet of the person. Shezeu elyon, you can see that this is the upper part, and the upper part conducts and leads the lower part, which is not the case when a person is sleeping. When a person is sleeping, then the upper part of the person and the lower part of the person, they are equal. You can't tell what's the head and what's the feet. Obaruchni is spiritually enyanim hachilak elyon, on the top of the person, mesamol, this is spiritual, and the lower part of a person, this is the physical. From this we can understand that even though that's simply and in a revealed way, inyan shkiva, when a person lays down, kishehamayla, when the upper part of the person, the spiritual part, equals the lower part, this is a tremendous descent. When does a person lay down? When he goes to sleep. That's usually the way it is. But the source of this, in a deeper way, is this idea of going to sleep is very, very high, laying down. That only in such a situation, the upper part is found together with the lower part. Equal. That this comes because of from the revelation of God's essence. This is the aspect of a person which is above any sort of categories of up and down. Now, up and down, this is only part of the creation. What is the source of up and down? The Creator. By the Creator, there's no up and down. Just like we say, by God, there's no past, present, and future. Those are all creations. We can't conceive what that means. It's impossible to understand. And that's exactly the idea of going to sleep for good. It's higher than understanding. This, what Yaakov achieved, and this is also in the Holy Temple, was a level of godliness where the physical is on the same level as the spiritual. Indeed, there is no spiritual, no physical. It's just pure Creator. Harishneim, both of them are equal totally. Al derech zeh, you do it like it's known, shapshitos shall ish pashut, that the simplicity of a simple person, that by him there is the intelligence works. Right? I'm sorry, that by him his intelligence is not working. Right? He's not an intellectual person. Kashura in Pshitas Atzmos, a simple Jew is considered connected to the simplicity of God's essence. This also answers the question about Daniel and the lions. I mean, he didn't know he was in a bunch of lions. The smartest person in the world, no matter how holy he is, he knows he's in a lion's den. And he knows that lions eat you up. There must have been 1 second when he was thrown in, he thought, whoa, what's going to be with me now? Huh? I better think about God. But he felt all these lions, breathing on him and everything like that. It's not easy to think about God. So the answer is no. He didn't use his mind at all. It wasn't Daniel. I'm just bringing Daniel as an example. By Daniel, his mind and his feet were the same thing. And as a result, being in a lion's den and being in a synagogue by him were the same thing. Right? All of them are creations of God. When you're in a synagogue, you're supposed to pray. There's certain laws. When you're among lions, what are you supposed to do then? Huh? You're supposed to be afraid. Oh, really? Does that say in the Torah you're supposed to be afraid when you're with lions? You're supposed to be afraid. Huh? That's what it says. If you think that they're going to, you're not supposed to take chances. I mean, that person's not supposed to throw himself in a lion's den. But if he's there, what are you supposed to do? He's supposed to believe in God. By him, everything was godliness. He used everything he had, whether it's his feet or his head, everything was God. By him, feet and head were the same. I'm just bringing that as an example, but it was the same thing with Yaakov. The connection of Yaakov was with God wasn't because he was a spiritual, high, tremendously gifted, intellectual, genius, holy person. It was because he was a simple person. He realized that the same God that's creating my feet is creating my head. Then there is, when there is spirituality, then there's a difference between up and down. But in the essence of all being, whether it's head, lion, feet, lions, people, everything is it's just the revelation of godliness. In other words, the service of a Jew is supposed to be when he goes out from Beersheba, which is a wonderful holy place, and he went to Haron, which is the worst place in the world. That's like the lion's den. There's two things. Number one, Nosef al his gabrus shall gilui haruchnis ala helem gashmius. In addition to the fact that you have to really strengthen yourself spiritually to overcome and defy the physical world, but often gashmius in a way that the physical world does not conceal. Elahi kli, but it becomes a vessel for spirituality. Kafishu nimsa begidri mitzioto, as it is in its existence. In other words, the enemy, so to speak, becomes subjugated to you. Him lamorota call helam behester aruchnis, but nevertheless it's concealment. Like, let's take the example Noah's Ark. Maybe that's an example. Noah's Ark. The animals in Noah's Ark, they were not negated to Noah. God commanded them. He made a revelation there that calmed all the animals down. Right? But if the animals started roaring, and then Noah might be afraid, right? Which is not the case in the case of Daniel in the lion's den. Is what happened was the lions didn't conceal at all. It wasn't a temporary thing. It was a permanent thing because God is everywhere. God is creating everything. And because just the lions would not dream of doing anything against God, so they would never dream against doing anything against Daniel. It was just in their nature. They just couldn't do it. So there's two ways of dealing with the world. One is that you're so holy that the world becomes quiet and you become quiet. That's something like Noah and the ark. But then there's another way that what? Hashtavas as actus ben gashmis ruknis, that the spirit, the physical, is not just subdued. Al Yadeh, but what? It becomes godly itself. Al Yadeh Gilei Atzmos, by revelation of the essence of God, which is above both of them. So this is that the animals, I mean, I'm not exactly sure that what I'm saying is right, that the animals in the Ark of Noah were not unified with God like the lions and Daniel's this. But let's say the lions that were in the Daniel's thing, they were completely negated to godliness. They became, so to speak, part of the congregation of Daniel, which is not the case with the animals in Noah's Ark. They did their thing. They ate. It just happened to be that they were quiet for one full year, and it was for their own benefit that they did it. That they, by means of that, they got fed in them. So there's two ways of dealing with the world. Either you're so holy that you have an effect on the world, I mean, that the world doesn't affect you, or a higher level that you're so simple in holiness that everything in the world is affected by God. True unity. According to this, we can understand what Yaakov did, that he laid down in that place. That's exactly the opposite. Only by means of this, when he came to the place of the holy temple, that in the holy temple, that's the ultimate unity with godliness, to the revelation of God's essence in the holy temple, and especially in the Holy of Holies, that there was the ark, and it says that the ark was not measurable. The ark had to have exact measurement, or it was disqualified. But nevertheless, when it was in the Holy of Holies, it didn't have any measure. When they measured from one end of the ark to the wall, and from the other end of the ark to the wall, right, there were people that they lowered down in order to clean. They measured from one end. It ended up that the ark didn't take up any space. So if so, we saw that things were there and they weren't there at the same time. That's what Yaakov accomplished by laying down. He unified the head and the feet, that everything, total unity above and below the revelation of God's essence. All right, let's do a little bit more. This is what the sentence says, continues, Vayachalom, that he went to sleep and he saw that there was a ladder. There was a ladder, not a ladder, a ladder, Ladder. There was a ladder standing on that place on the ground, and the head of the ladder reached to the heavens. But it doesn't say it was standing on the ground. It was standing in the direction of the ground, and its head reached in the direction of the heavens. Malchut, and he saw that there were angels going up and coming down. And he saw that God was standing over him. This is a uniting between Arza, this ladder stood in the direction of the ground, and the top one in the direction of the heavens. In other words, the lowest of the lows didn't just stop in the ground, it kept going down and down in that direction. And it didn't stop in the heavens, it kept going up and up. This was connected to God's essence, but Derech Memele, so automatically there was found also all these angels. The angels were there because the essence of God was revealed, so the angels were also revealed. So what does it say after that? That Yaakov laid down, and it says that he was very afraid. And he said, how frightening is this place? Because this is a house of God. Bias Vadira lo, it's a house and a dwelling for God. That's what Jacob said. Shahadar Vadira, a person that lives in a dwelling, is revealed all of his essence. God's house. When you go home, so you reveal, right, who you are, you can rest. You're how do you say, you're yourself. Then you're not worried about anything. Then you can really get work done when you're at home. So that's God's house. God's house, his whole essence is revealed in the house. That was why Yaakov was so in awe. Calls that all this was afterwards when he made this pillar. We'll talk about that. Yaakov did until Kol Asher Titenli Aser Aseren Olach. And then finally Yaakov said, okay, God, I promise everything you give me, God, I'll give a tenth to you, back to you, by means of the revelation of God's essence. He said, all that you give me. What does it mean? Physical world. The physical world and the spiritual world, that's all that God gave to Yaakov. Physical and spiritual is Hari. I will give a tenth to you. What is the level of tenth? The 10th level of the Sfirot, that's the aspect of Keter. And even more, I'll give it L'cha, to you, to your essence, God. Will go L'cha, belongs to you. Okay, what's going on? Yaakov, his whole job was to reveal God in the physical world. And Yaakov revealed that this physical world potentially is infinitely higher than any of the spiritual worlds. But in order to reveal this, you have to be spiritual. Where did Yaakov reveal this? When he came to the place of the Holy Temple, and he put his head, which is the spiritual, to the same level as his feet, which is the physical, and he made a promise to God that everything that you give me in the physical world or in the spiritual world, right, I will devote to your crown, to your will, God. That's the number 10. We're going to go over this, God willing, again tomorrow. I'm sorry, we had a little bit of technical disturbances over here. Now let's do the Yom Yom. We say by Jacob that there's a ladder standing on the ground. Prayer. Now, what is prayer? Prayer means you just say to God, God, help me. God, heal the sick, whatever. Or there's also prayer, God, thank you. I really appreciate it. Prayer is also a ladder that connects the souls and God. There's another aspect of prayer, and that is appreciation. You come to appreciate God. You start thinking about, who am I praying to? I'm praying to what? There's nothing here. I don't see anybody. Nobody sees. What am I praying to? Am I praying to a spirit? That's something. There's all these spiritual aspects of God also, right? That you have to watch out for idolatry. You're not praying to the wrong spirit. But there's all sorts of levels of godliness. We learned about the 10 sfirot and etc. And that's higher and higher levels of godliness and awareness that you can have of God. Well, that's like a ladder. That's Jacob's ladder. And it connects the soul and godliness. And even though this ladder is standing on the ground, namely, a person starts praying, just saying, okay, God, I believe in you, but I have no idea what you are. But I believe. But the top of it reaches toward the heavens. What does it mean, the heavens? It's total self-nullification, total harmony. But you can only get to this level by, first of all, you have to understand God a little bit and comprehend God. That's in the Psuki de Zimmer. That's by saying the Psalms of King David and thinking about them and the blessings before Shema and saying Shema Yisrael. That means understanding what you can about God. But the essence of this ladder of prayer is going from level of level, leaving your little selfish understanding of what reality is and getting more and more comprehension of the Creator and the feeling that we call dat. Remember the Creator, that a person, it's like a ladder. A person goes up and up, higher and higher. But in order to do this, first of all, you have to have the lower stages of understanding. That's what we have Chassidut for. Chassidut is to help us raise up and understand something about God, and then to understand that our previous understanding was not it. We have to understand, and then we have a higher understanding of God, a higher connection to God. And then we realize that also was just a level of understanding. That's the rungs of the ladder. Have a good day with Moshiach. Now, God willing, at 3:00, we will learn a Sikha of the Rebbe, a Sikha of the Rebbe. And if you look in the YouTube, you'll see I'll put up the Chumash class from last year, talking about the birth of the children of Jacob. Have a good day with Moshiach now.
Amen. Amen.